All right, and we're back, and it's COMP305. It's the winter 2016 semester, and it's week 9, part 2 of our broadcast. The first part was we did this little terrain, and we tried it with the Water Pro daytime effect. Let's just get rid of this. Try a different way. Deleted game object, it says. All right. Well, there's also materials, right? We have our water plane material, right? It looks like this. And our Water Pro daytime material that looks like this. I wonder if I can make this go just with the material itself. I've got my script, right? I got my water script, my water other stuff here, right? Is there a way that I can, use a plane to do this, right? As opposed to water, like or the water script itself. Let's try that out, see what happens. So I'm gonna add a new, not an empty, let's get rid of that. I wanna make a new 3D object plane, right? And I'm gonna pull it up so we can see it, there it is. And I wanna be careful, see where the plane is gonna be located here, right? I wanna see, imagine this plane here is gonna be the water, right? So I'm gonna kind of zoom into it for a second. So frame select mode. You can see that if I pull it up a little bit higher with the green arrow, it'll be closer and closer to the top. So probably something like that would be good. That's where the plane is going to be, right? And let's make this plane the size that I think it should be. Now, again, there's ways of doing this. If I just change the scale, right? I can't change the Y scale, but I can change this. Let's make it 28 again, like 28, like we thought that was the right size, right? And see if that's correct. It's probably too big. That's huge, right? Massive. Let's try a little bit different. Let's say try 10. Okay, that's too big. Let's try 5, maybe. Yeah, 5 seems about right. And by a 5, right? 5 by 5. And let's just look at it from the side here so we can see that that's correct, right? And we're going to slip that plane underneath the other one. And I'm going to zoom. I'm going to frame select mode to zoom in a little bit. Right? Even that's a little bit big, but you can see that that is covering everything. So all I'm doing here is I've got this to show the river. I've got this blank plane. Can I take my water material, like being smart guys that we are, right? Take our water material. I got my mesh collider here too. I got to be careful about that. Let's take my water material and plop it inside there. It's like, is that possible? So I can do like Water Pro daytime. Well, it doesn't look right. Let's see what happens when I try and do that. I'm trying to be smart the way I am. It's black, and never mind that, but I can actually walk on it like a black. It's the black lake, right? So that's kind of weird. So that didn't kind of work out the way I wanted it, right? Because if you notice what we did when we had our prefab for our water. By the way, there's water basic too. Here's water basic. You notice that there's some models. There's my water basic. If I bring my water basic plane on, right? Here's my water basic plane. And if I frame select that one, notice that it is this shape again, right? That we have, right? So, but I can't modify it from this shape. How do I do it? Right? And if you notice that I have this water basic plane, that's the shape that I have, right? Well, where does this thing get its shape? There's my prefab, right? Here's my mesh and my water basic plane. So here's my water basic plane. Take a look at the mesh that I'm using, water basic plane mesh. Can I point that to something else? Yeah, man, I can. Well, first of all, let's do a couple things. Notice that this plane points to a plane mesh, right? So if that's the truth, I like where the plane is, right? I like the idea of the plane. The plane we're going to use is 5 by 5 by 1. This is the idea of 5 by 5 by 1. Right? So let's get rid of this plane for a second and get rid of this water basic idea. And we've seen how I'm kind of trying to be tricky on how to do this. So I click on my water like I did before, and I'm going to go to my prefabs, and I'm going to bring in my Water Pro daytime again, just for a second. And instead of us accepting this water plane mesh, I'm going to click on this little target tool, and I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to kind of see if there's anything else I can choose as a shape, right? Well, here's something. I can use a cube, capsule, a cylinder. What if I just choose something else, like a sphere? Is that a water sphere that I made? Right, let's see what that looks like. So if I'm right, so choose a sphere instead of a regular thing. And I'm gonna kind of frame select most and press F and go in there. And if I pull it up, it looks like the same kind of idea, right? But it's supposed to be a sphere, right? How come it's not showing me a sphere? So it's just, huh? Well, my Y is 1, so let's make this 16. So that's my sphere, right? And if I press play, I look over here, where's my sphere? Where's my water sphere? Did it fall? No, it's right over here, right? It's way too high in the sky for my guy to see. Let's move them down inside here so you can see this water sphere like this. And let's go back to my game. Now what do I see? I see this water sphere, right? And if I'm in it, I'm in the water sphere, right? I can see that the whole thing is a watery sphere. Hey, this is something neat. Remember, water is a neat effect, but it can also mean like force field, right? This doesn't have to be water, guys, is what I'm saying, right? It's neat. But you can make it whatever shape you want, right? Cube, sphere, your own shapes. Import something from somewhere else, use that. Hey, I got something from somewhere else, right? I got that crazy prefab shape that I used from Blender. Could I make that into my shape? Probably, right? Let's escape from this and try that out. So I've got my crazy watery sphere, and I want to check this out. Instead of the sphere shape, I want to see all the things that I have access to. Here, look, walls. Walls, that's like my Blender shapes, right, that I used before. There's my walls, Blender shapes. Let's try that out and, press play on this one, right? And you can see that, I have this watery area here. And as I walk, I can see that there's other areas that are just sitting there, right? There's my watery wall. Take a look what it looks like, right? So you can make your sphere, this is the neat thing about using things like Unity. You can make your water work on any surface. Now, what I want to do, obviously, is I don't want to make it so that it's walls, right? I want to make it so that it's a plane. So I'm going to choose a basic plane. There it is. And my plane is going to be the right shape. My Y is going to be 1 because there is no height to the plane, as an example. Now, 16 by 16 is too much. We know that it's 5 by 5 that I need because I've already pre-measured it with my plane. And now I'm going to move it into place so that it is the right shape for my thing. If you want to know exactly what it is, I'm going to click on the Y spoke of my gizmo here, right? To look at it from the top. I want to change from perspective mode into ISO mode, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see what's happening, right? So I'm going to kind of pull this into the middle of my screen, pull this over so I can have more space, and kind of really zoom in here so I can see what my water is going to look like, right? And just pull it to the middle. And what I want to do is now I'm going to choose the W key to move it. I'm going to move it exactly as close to my plane as possible, right? There it is. So that's on top of my plane, right? And now I want to move back into perspective mode, right? And I want to kind of turn everything so I can see what level it's at. That's not the right level. I want to move this so that it goes down just below my level. And notice that right now it's 9.47. So you know it's under 10. If you want to make sure that it's a certain level, you can specify. Let's say I want to make it 9.4, right? If that's not nicer, I can make that nicer. And notice that it's 24.93 by 25.04. I did it by eye. So what does that mean from a position perspective? I can make this 25, right, by 25. Make it almost identical, the same, right? So modify that a little bit. And now I have a much better shape for my water. It doesn't stick out over here, and water is underneath every part of my landmass. Let's try this out. Okay, there it is. It's kind of weird over here because, right, that's at the edge, right? That's kind of weird, right? And I look over here and it's like, whoa, it's an edge, right? So what can I do to make this work for assignment 3? Because this is what you're going to ask. Okay, I got assignment 3 going on, and I want to make this work. Why are you showing us this, Tom? Right? Because this is part of what I'm doing. Well, remember last time we built a maze, right? And we put it in this thing. Well, you can use these effects to kind of create a box around your area, almost like a sandbox where your player can play around, places that he can't go outside of, right? Right now, our colliders allow you to go anywhere, even off the edge, right? I can stop a person from going off the edge altogether, right? What about if if you go into the water, you lose health? Maybe the water is not water. Maybe the water is fire, right? Remember, you can make this water. Right now, if you notice here's my normal map and everything else, I can always change the color of this stuff to whatever I want, right? I mean, this is just materials, right? So that means I can go back to my material, my Water Pro Daytime, right? And I can start changing stuff, you know, on my water. Here's my refraction color, right? Right now it's nothing. And if I want to change this, here's my simple water horizon color, right? I can change these things so that the water appears to be a different color, like green or red or something else, or have a red tinge to it, right? So it looks like it's something else, right? We're not going to do it right now because I want to leave it as is, but you can certainly choose whatever you want to make this go. Other things to note is the wave speed. Here's the wave speed and the simple water horizon color. All this stuff here is the stuff that you can change and distort to make the water even more choppy or more calm, depending on what you want to do. Okay. All right, so cool. So we got water. What about making the exterior pieces here kind of like a box? Can I do that? I can, right? I can add more of these cliffs all the way around. So my character starts here, but he can't get off the map, right? He's stuck on this map. He's got to, you know, go around and avoid his, you know, some dangers or whatever he's going to be doing around the map. We're going to do more with terrains, by the way. This is not the last time we're going to do a terrain, but I wanted to introduce this as an alternate to just making a square map or using some kind of tiles that we made the last day, right? Okay, let's put this on. Let's make this, let's do a little bit more sculpting. So I'm going to click on my terrain. And again, I'm going to click my on this piece here, which is my raised lower. I'm still using this piece, and what I want to do here, very carefully, is kill this piece of the lake or the river, right? Draw it up so there's no more river on this side, and almost draw an edge to my entire map, right? Make some mountainous areas here, right? So the river can go. It stops kind of over here. And what am I doing here? You see what I'm saying? And sometimes I need to rotate stuff to make sure it looks right. But what I'm doing is I'm making a sandbox, right? With this area here, I'm creating an area that looks like all the way around this area, where the player came in, there's these mountains. Now you have to make it look as natural as you like, right? This is just the first piece, like we did over here, right? With these mountains, right? You want to do the same kind of idea over with these mountains over here. So the player can't leave this area. Right now he can climb over here and leave, right? But we're going to add colliders so that he can't, right? And there's different kinds of colliders you can add in here so that when he collides with this area, the player will just bounce off, right? This is what's done, by the way, a lot of times with other games, AAA games. They kind of create an area that you can see or whatever, but you can't go over them, all right? This is what the area looks like. It's got to look natural, right? We have to also test it with the player. So let's see what the player looks like. So he sees this kind of an area where he can't leave. Over here, it looks like he can kind of come into the area, and this would be a great entry point for something like a tile map, like over here on the back, like we had before, right? He can start here, but when he comes to the edge, like this area here, and that's kind of a weird looking mountain. I gotta fix that piece, right? That's like weird looking, right? So let's escape from that, flatten that out. This piece. So we'll shift click. So it doesn't have to be so big. Okay, there it is. And we can add a different texture to it. We'll do some texture painting there, make it more of mountainous kind of look to it by darkening it, making that kind of mountain look to it. There we go. Same as over here, kind of add that texture to it. Right? Over here, mountains. And we can add areas that have sand as well, right, to this area. So we can kind of make it mountainous in some areas that have sand. Just kind of bring that up. We'll use the sand color. And we'll make it really, really, like, much less opaque. The opacity will be very small. So kind of lighter areas, like, let's say at the base of the mountains, we kind of mix and match this area. So we're going to just paint these areas up, kind of give the illusion of the base of the mountain. go. Okay, cool. We've added those things. Let's add some trees, for God's sake, right? Okay, trees are funny, funny things. Right? We've added some stuff. We got to be careful how to add the trees so they don't look too fake. Let's zoom in here, all right? And this area will be a great plane for some trees, right? If I click on trees, right, notice that there says no trees defined, right? There's this one, which is paint trees, right? So paint trees, that's what it allows me to do, just brush the trees on. This one, right, what it does is it defines the tree, right? So I click on edit trees, add tree, right? And it says, hey, what's the tree prefab that I want to look at? Well, I want to click on, and what I want to kind of look for is something like called speed tree. Well, speed tree, I don't have that as something that I can draw into, right? Okay, so that's cool. So I mean, it doesn't seem that I have anything that I could do there. How about our prefabs? So I go back into my standard assets, environment, and I go terrain assets. Oh, back one. Speed tree is what I want. And I have a bunch of them. I have a broadleaf. This is where I have broadleaf conifers. And I have a conifer, right? So these are what looks like, just letting you know, just so I give you an idea of what these where these come from. I have palms, broadleaves, and conifers. Broadleaf is what I want, right? And it's under the speed tree that I want to look at. So I want to get a broadleaf speed tree going. Now, speed tree is its own company. If I was going to look up speed tree on the internet, see what that looks like. If I go speed tree actually does, all they do is animated trees for AAA games, right? So they have this thing where you can, they do visual effects animation. These people, that's all they do is do speed trees, right? So if I click on try, they'll talk about how you can evaluate their speed trees and everything else, but really that's all they do. They make speed trees. If I look for some, I go back, and if I go speed tree for Unity, here's a package that you can download for Unity, right? And by the way, when you download this package, it's a trial. I think it costs something like $19 a month to participate in this thing. Because if you're a professional kind of gaming house, it's okay. But for us little guys, you know, $19 a month might break the bank. You know what I'm saying? We can't afford that, right? Especially if we have to justify making stuff with terrain, right? So, but this is what the kind of trees they look like. Very realistic trees. There is a tree maker built into Unity. But really, the speed tree stuff that they come out with, speed tree itself, the people who make the speed tree stuff for Unity, it's incomparable. It's really quite neat what you can do with it. So let's use the speed tree stuff. We're going to use broadleaf as part of our speed trees. All right, so how do I do that? So going back to our terrain, now remember, I want to add a speed tree in here, and it says no trees defined, right? If I edit trees, add a tree, and it says, hey, show me a tree prefab that I've got. Do I have a tree prefab that I can point to? And I do. I have broadleaf. Remember we talked about some of these broadleaves as our tree prefabs. These are already pre-done trees that come from speed tree. So there's 3 of them. There's broadleaf mobile, broadleaf desktop, Conifer desktop. Let's go with broadleaf desktop. Okay, that's the one we want to use. Press add. Okay, cool. So we've got our tree. It also tells us our brush size, which is massive. Let's bring that brush size right down. Even smaller. Okay, let me show you. If I click onto this now, like this, right? Our tree height is massive. If I put this tree height in, if I go click, right? I gotta wait a second. Creates this crazy tree. It's crazy. It's massive. Like the tree is like a super tree, right? Look at it. Okay, nice idea, way too big. Let's try this again. So I like this size, but the size, the tree height is what we're talking about. Our brush size is big. Our tree density is another one. Tree height's got to come way down, right? So I'm going to drag this control to the left a little bit. And I want to even drag my brush size even lower. Like we're talking about like 4. That's a little better. Now, if you want to see to check that height of the tree out, let's go and check that out and see what it looks like. So I'm over here, and I'm running over to it, clap, 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 and then I come over to it, and I see this. Doesn't quite look right. How come these doesn't look right? Huh? But see, the tree is not so bad. It's kind of a little short tree. I think you can probably go with a little bit taller trees because the trunk is kind of too low. It does escape and go back out, right, and undo. Go back to my terrain, and I want to get rid of this tree. Again, if I look at the tree, if I click on the tree and look at my brush size is really big, let's drag my brush size really small. And if I shift click, I can delete the tree, just like I normally could come up with them. Okay, but we got a problem, right? Height is okay. Now the original height was a little bit too big. Let's just drag that a little bit less. By the way, see there's these two little anchors here, right? There's one size on the right and the other size on the left. This is the variation of the randomness in size. You can make it so it's as low as this and as high as this. That's the random range, right? So you want to make it so that the height starts off like this, but they can be quite high as well. Something like that. Okay, cool. Let's plant the tree. So kind of much more of a bigger tree. Let's take a look at that, what that looks like now. That's kind of a random size. So now look at the size of our characters. The tree makes sense now. Yeah, it does. Kind of a bigger tree, and it looks like we're in kind of a forest. But our leaves are weird. How do we fix that? Right? Leaves are just textures, right? Leaves are just textures. And if you look at this tree, if I click on this tree and click Edit Trees, edit the tree, right? Here's my tree prefab that I'm looking at. This Broadleaf Tree Desktop is what I'm looking at, right? So if I go back to my prefabs, right, for that's underneath my environment. So I go, again, standard assets, environment, and if I look at speed tree, do I have a broadleaf prefab somewhere in here? And how do I know the difference between a prefab and something else? Well, I click on a broadleaf desktop and notice that there's a broadleaf. This broadleaf desktop is the prefab. This is the one right here, right? And what it does is it has a couple things. It has levels of detail that you can modify. Levels of detail, we'll get into something later, but it means the farther you are away, then the less detail you have. The closer you are up, the level of detail improves, right? Okay, cool. So that's one thing we know. The level of detail is there. But we also actually have Broadleaf Desktop materials. Here's our materials. And Broadleaf Desktop Atlas. It's our atlas. And here's our the way the tree looks, right? Okay, so that's definitely one way of doing it, by just painting the texture on, right? Notice that it says the desktop atlas texture is just a texture, right? Atlas is a texture. But unfortunately for us, from a texture perspective, it doesn't have transparency, right? And for whatever reason, when we convert it from one to the other, our broadleaf trees, right, that we're looking at right now, for our leaves, right? If I look at broad leaves, here's my broadleaf card desktop. That's our broadleaf card. Here's our broadleaves desktop. That's our for the tree. Each one of them has textures, right? Here's my materials, and this is all my textures. Here's my billboard materials, right? And my textures is going to be the one that I select, my base RGB textures, right? So that's where the problem is. My shader is Nature Speed Tree Billboard, right? It's my shader. And sometimes I need to change this to something else, right? So where do I find, if I go Legacy Textures, notice that there's other textures down here as well that I could choose from my textures. I gotta be careful which one it is, right? Here's Nature. Here's a Speed Tree Billboard. What about if I chose Speed Tree? What does that do to my textures, right? Does it take away this issue? Absolutely not. Here's another thing. Can I actually click on this tree at all? Like do anything with it? Let's click away. And I want to click over this thing and click on this tree. Can I click on it? Oh. Can't do that, that's what I'm saying. So even if I click away, once I click on the tree, I'm actually going back to my terrain, right? So I got this funky stuff going on here. Well, why is that, right? Well, it's the type of stuff I've got in here. This is the way I've made the tree. Let's go back to my edit my texture and remove my tree. Yay, tree's gone. Let's go back to this one now. Here's another one. I can edit details, right? If I go edit details, I can add grass details and I can add other grass for this one. That's what this one does. This one does trees. This one does grass and other details. If I go to here again and add my tree, just bear with me. Let's add a different kind of tree. Let's add a conifer as an example. So I'm going to click on this one and click on the Conifer desktop and then click onto this thing and that's it and click add. Now my conifer, instead of my brush being so darn big, let's make my brush really small, right? If I click onto it, I got this big conifer, right? This looks more realistic for now. And I think for now, let's use this one. Right? So I got a couple of conifers. I want to put a couple of trees in here. They're pretty tall, right? And I can put them kind of in here. Now, this might be way too tall for my character. And they're way taller than the mountains. My trees are like massive trees, right? That doesn't make any sense. So again, I got to go back there and undo those, right? So undo, undo, or I can paint them down, right? So I can kind of look at this, the tree itself. My brush size is 40, and I'm going to press Shift click and get rid of them all, right? Okay, here's something I want to do. I want to mass place trees, but I definitely want to make my brush size smaller, again, way down, like this. And I definitely want to reduce the size of my trees. My height is what my problem is, right? Because it's just unrealistic, okay? And again, I don't have to make it random. If I unclick this, I can choose what I want from the heights. It's kind of make it like, you know, a bit of variation, but not much. And I can kind of put these trees in place. Still looks like they're higher than the hills, but that's okay. It's the way we've drawn our landscape here. A couple of trees here, the difference in heights, make them a little bit more interesting. Right. And let's kind of play and see what happens. Nice couple of trees and walk over to them. They have shading, they have everything. Look, they even have, you know, colliders, right? So I can't run into them, right? But they even reflect nicely in the water. The whole idea, right? All the same stuff that we've seen before. So there we go. We've got our kind of a terrain. You can play around with the trees. We're going to hit this again. This is not the last time we're going to hit this again. This thing. I want to add some grass. Just before we go, let's try the grass. So I want to add some. This one, the second last one. So this one here, the third from the right is trees. The second from the right is grass or other kind of details. Let's edit the details. Add a grass texture, right? Now again, we can choose the detail texture. So I'm going to choose this little select mode. And I want to see any kind of grass that I have. I've got a bunch of them, right? So here's grass frond albedo. They're going to give us an example of what it looks like here for the trees. Okay, so let's try grass frond albedo alpha, the first one, and press that one. Notice that there's healthy color and dry color, and the minimum width and height of the grass. Okay, cool. So we've got that. Let's click add. So we got our grass right there. First thing I did. I'm not changing the brush size. The brush size is pretty big. I'm going to kind of go in there now and start brushing this grass that I made. Let's try that. So we click, 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 right? Move around here, right? And move this inside. Kind of zoom in to this little area that I made. And we're going to click some more grass. We're going to go back to my terrain. I'm going to go back to this, the grass that I got. Click a few more pieces of grass over here as well. Not too much, mind you, because it'll look too cluttered. Okay, cool. Let's play and see what it looks like. And now we got some of this. Let's see, some grass that kind of waves like this, right? I'm going to go into hills. Okay. Now, if you don't like this, if it's too much for you, there's different kinds of grass you can experiment with, right? And one other thing I'll do before we leave for the day is we talked about making terrains, like making a level last day and this day, different kinds of levels, more of a natural level, more of a, you know, structural level, right? That you can make with Blender or some other programs out there, right? You can always download things from Unity online as well, right? So there's additional nature assets that you can download from Unity. So if I go to Window, So here's my window. If I go down to my asset store for a second before I leave you for the day, and if I look for Unity Technologies, that's what I want to search for, Unity Technologies, and press enter. These are all the Unity Technologies, free kind of demos they've got with this, right? They've got a bunch of free demos here, or free assets and stuff that you can download, right? So if I go top free, there's a bunch of standard assets. There's survival, space shooter. Hey, here's something, nature starter kit too. All right, well, let's see what that is. Nature starter kit too. It looks like it's from another publisher, Shapes. And it has two things, some bushes, some trees, some ground textures, some grass textures, a simple skybox, all kinds of stuff that you can download. And there's some example pictures here. I'm not going to play them, of what they look like, right? That's what it would look like to create simple nature scenes. So if you want to, there's tons of assets around to get your stuff going. So I wanted to give you this additional information for us to make our level with, right? So remember, you don't have to leave it as natural or just, the maze or whatever we made. You can combine the two elements too. And we'll stop there by adding our maze tile at the corner over here. Let's try that out. So I've got my maze tile already from scene 1, right, which we already have. And I'm going to go into our regular materials, our regular prefabs. We made our maze tile. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my maze tile onto the scene to give you an idea of how big it is, right? And I'm going to kind of frame select mode and go into it and see what it looks like. And I got to put it too low because then it'll look kind of weird, right? But I want to kind of interact with the other background right here. So I'm going to kind of grab this, move it around, and let's take a look at my height. My height should be the same as the ground, so 10, right? I don't want to make it any lower than this, right? Maybe even a little bit higher, let's say 10.1, just to make it above everything else. And I want to kind of add it so that it kind of comes in over here. Right? Now remember that it's overlapping with other stuff. You have to be very careful what it looks like. That's kind of looking weird, right? So but let's say right in the corner here, where just before everything else, our character came from kind of a maze and it's colliding with this area here, right? You can make your level look like whatever you want, right? I'm just giving you an idea, right? So let's say here's our character now. Go to the player, and let's see where he is. Let's grab him around, and let's move him way over here, right? So he starts off his life down over here, right? And let's press play. Okay, so we've got our little maze. Hey, look, I see the tree, right? And I can walk over the maze, and let's say we make our walls, and then, hey, what's going on over here? So there's nothing wrong with combining the two. It kind of looks weird over here. That's kind of looking weird, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't do it with some careful planning. Right? If you carefully plan stuff out a little bit more than just slapping things together like I have, like today, right? I'm just showing you techniques today that you can apply to make your own level. It doesn't take long. 1 hour, 2 tops, you can make a level that's pretty nice, right? With the tools that are built into Unity and some stuff that you made with another editor like Blender or something else for your game. Once you set upon your level, don't keep doing stuff with it. Make it and end it. Make your level like a sandbox, right? Because I think it's important for you to contain your character in here, for your character to do stuff. So now I can keep walking into my level. Now there's some problems here we have from a walking perspective because I want to go splish, splash, splish when I walk in there as opposed to what I did before. And there's ways of doing that because I can detect, I can create a collider that knows that, well, when I'm here, I'm inside the water, right? And when I'm out of here, I'm outside the water. Because the water is a plane, right? The water is a plane. So I can detect when I have some kind of collision going on. It doesn't have to be a collision, a physics collision. I can add a trigger collider. So when I'm actually on there, I'm triggering the steps that are going to sound. It's going to be a different set of steps than the ones that I have here. And I can use a little bit of script to change the clip, the audio clip that I'm using, right, with the one I'm using now for steps. All right, questions around today. Today was all around finishing off our little, another little experiment of our terrain. I'm going to save this level, file, save scene, right? And I've just combined a couple things together. You can certainly do that as well. You can make it so that you have geometric objects like houses, buildings, towers, whatever you like in your level, right? in order for it to be interesting. Any questions around today? Okay, next day tomorrow, I want to talk more about how to add things like hazards tomorrow, how to get around them, how to make hazards, and how to do some scoring. Because by Friday, really you have to have your basic mechanics working for your game, okay? So let's get this done for tomorrow, right? So tomorrow's session between 6:30 and 8:30, we're going to talk about hazards and how to do them, okay? Very simple. And that's it for me today. Thanks.